What if the greatest threat to your love wasn't a rival, but your own mother? In this gripping drama, CEO Toan risks everything to help the woman he loves, Diem, by secretly renovating her humble home. But behind his back, his cold and calculating mother takes matters into her own hands, sending thugs to destroy it all. As Diem breaks down in despair, Toan remains unaware that the smiling woman sipping tea beside my hung is the very monster who shattered their world. Subscribe now and follow this emotional, twisted love story where loyalty is tested and betrayal wears pearls. The chandelier in the grand dining hall swayed gently above the long, polished mahogany table, catching glints of golden afternoon sunlight. Seated at the head of the table, Mrs. Tran, the formidable mother of CEO Toan, sipped her jasmine tea with impeccable poise. On the surface, she was every inch the graceful matriarch of a prestigious family. But beneath that calm exterior, a storm had begun to rage. Earlier that morning, one of her trusted informants had come to her with news she found utterly disgraceful. Her son, the pride of the Tran family, had secretly funded the renovation of a dilapidated house. And not just any house, Diem's house. That girl. The one with soft-spoken words and kind eyes, the one who came from nowhere. In Mrs. Tran's eyes, Diem was nothing more than a poor orphan clinging to Toan's generosity, a threat to the future she had meticulously planned for her only son. The teacup trembled slightly in her hand as her grip tightened. So, he's willing to throw away millions for that girl, she muttered under her breath, eyes narrowing. She had warned Toan, subtly and directly. She had introduced him to my home, a sophisticated woman from a well-connected family, hoping he would come to his senses. But now he was building nests with someone she didn't approve of. That was not just disobedience, it was betrayal. Without raising her voice or showing a flicker of emotion to the servants around her, she excused herself and walked into her private study. There, in the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the soft ticking of the antique clock, she made a single phone call. Send some men. I want that house ruined. Destroyed. Make it look like a random act, vandalism, theft, whatever you need. I want her to feel unsafe, small, powerless. But make sure it can't be traced back to me or the family. Is that clear? A pause. A confirmation. And then the line went dead. She stood for a moment, still as a statue, letting the weight of what she had just done settle into her bones. It wasn't that she hated Diem. No, she barely knew the girl. But Mrs. Tran believed in bloodlines, in legacy, in building a future where every move was calculated. And Diem didn't fit into that picture. She was a liability, sentimental, humble, and dangerously good at winning hearts. Even hers, perhaps, if she had let her guard down. But she wouldn't. As the hours passed, Mrs. Tran returned to her routine as if nothing had happened. She met a few old friends for lunch, smiled politely at their compliments about her son's recent business successes, and even laughed when someone mentioned the possibility of a wedding soon. "Well, we all hope Toan makes a wise choice," she said with a slight smirk, her voice honeyed with charm. No one would suspect that behind her calm, dignified demeanor, she had just orchestrated an act of cruelty that would shatter another woman's world. And Toan? He would never know. Not yet. The sky had turned a dull gray, as if it, too, sensed that something terrible was about to unfold. Diem stood in front of her small home, admiring the newly painted shutters. The scent of fresh wood still lingered in the air, mixing with the faint aroma of jasmine from the garden. She had worked tirelessly with the construction workers, choosing each tile, each curtain, each flower bed. But none of this would have been possible without Toan. She smiled quietly, thinking of him, how he had taken her hand and told her this house should feel like a true home. Their home. Hope fluttered in her chest. Inside, she was rearranging a framed photo of her late grandmother when it began. First, it was a loud bang, sharp, unnatural. Then, shouts. Male voices. Aggressive. Violent. Before Diem could react, the front door was kicked open with such force that it swung into the wall and cracked the plaster. 3 men in black stormed in like a thunderclap, their faces hidden beneath caps and scarves. Without a word, one of them grabbed a flower vase and smashed it to the floor. Another ripped down the newly hung curtains. The third overturned the table with a deafening crash. "No! Please, what are you doing?" Diem screamed, rushing forward, but one of them shoved her hard. She stumbled backward, landing on the floor, her hands scraping against shattered glass. They didn't respond. They didn't need to. Their message was clear: destroy everything. Her bookshelf was reduced to splinters. Her grandmother's altar was kicked over, candles rolling across the ground. Walls that had just been painted with soft creams and pastels now bore brutal gashes from hammers and crowbars. Windows shattered. Lamps exploded. Within minutes, the little haven Diem had built with so much love became a wasteland of dust and destruction. Tears streamed down her face, but she couldn't even find her voice. She sat trembling in the corner as the men ransacked her home like wild animals. And just as suddenly as they had come, they left, leaving the door hanging from its hinges, the wind howling through the broken glass. Silence followed, deafening and cruel. Neighbors peeked from behind closed curtains, too afraid to intervene. Some whispered about gang activity, others about jealous rivals. But none of them knew the truth. Diem, in a daze, crawled to the center of the room. Her knees scraped, her palms bleeding, her breath shallow. She picked up the pieces of a photo frame, one that held a picture of her in Toan, taken just weeks ago. The glass had slashed through the image, right across her smile. She wept. not just for the destruction of the house, but for the cruel unknown. Why had this happened? Who would do such a thing? She had no enemies, no debts, just dreams. In the midst of her despair, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Toan. "Are you home? I miss you. Let's have dinner tonight." Her fingers trembled as she stared at the screen. Should she tell him? Would he believe her? Or worse, would he think she brought this upon herself? But what Diem couldn't know, what no one could suspect, was that the monster who ordered this heartbreak wore silk scarves, pearls, and the coldest smile in the city. And that monster had just sat down for tea with my hon, humming softly, as if nothing in the world had ever broken. The next morning, the city bustled as usual, oblivious to the heartbreak scattered across a quiet residential street. In that neighborhood, among dust-covered floorboards and the scent of ruin, Diem sat silently, her arms wrapped around her knees. The once lively house now felt like a cold, lifeless shell. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her body bruised and aching, but the deepest wound lay hidden, buried in the questions tormenting her soul. Why her? Why now? Who hated her enough to destroy everything? Meanwhile, across town, in a private garden draped with bougainvillea and silk parasols, Mrs. Tran sipped tea as if the world were perfectly in order. Dressed in an ivory suit with pearls resting delicately on her collarbone, she was the very image of sophistication. Across from her sat my hong, glowing in a pastel dress, eyes full of affection. To any onlooker, it would seem like a pleasant meeting between mother and future daughter-in-law. "How is your new design firm doing?" Mrs. Tran asked sweetly, slicing into a piece of matcha cake with mechanical grace. "Growing fast, thanks to your introductions," my hung beamed. "And I heard Toan might be returning from Da Nang this week?" A glint passed through Mrs. Tran's eyes, gone before it could be named. "Yes. My son has been distracted lately, but I'm sure he'll come to his senses soon." She smiled, not kindly, but with the precision of someone who had just wiped away a stain. Toan, at that very moment, was driving back into the city. His phone had been off due to meetings, but the dozens of missed calls and frantic messages from Diem sent a chill through him. Her final voicemail had broken his heart. "Toan, the house is gone. I don't know what to do. Everything we built, it's destroyed." He didn't even wait to unpack. The moment he arrived, he sped toward Diem's neighborhood. What he found made his blood run cold. The house, their house, was in ruins. Walls caved in, glass everywhere, the furniture they'd chosen together splintered and soaked. And there, in the middle of it all, was Diem. Pale, shaking, a shell of the vibrant woman he loved. He rushed to her, pulling her into his arms. "Who did this?" he demanded, fury rising in his throat. I don't know, she whispered. The police said it might be random, a break-in. But it felt planned. It felt personal. Toan's jaw tightened. He would find out who did this. He would make them pay. But as he comforted Diem and tried to help her clean up, he never once thought to suspect the one person he trusted most, his mother. She had never even raised her voice about Diem. She had been distant, yes, but not cruel. Not violent. Or so he believed. That evening, Mrs. Tran stood in front of her mirror, removing her earrings one by one. A news alert on her phone caught her attention. Vandalism in quiet district leaves home in ruins. Investigation underway. She stared at the image, a blurred photo of Diem's house, and smiled faintly. Just then, her phone rang. Toan. She answered, masking her voice with perfect maternal concern. Hello, darling? Me, he said, his voice shaking. Diem's house was attacked. Everything's gone. Oh my God. That's terrible, she said smoothly. Do you think it was jealousy? You know, some women can be quite bitter when they see someone like Diem with you. He said nothing. I'll pray for her, she added gently. Tell her I'm here if she needs anything. And then she hung up, slipped her pearl earrings back into their velvet case, and smiled again. Because sometimes, a mother's love isn't gentle. Sometimes, it's ruthless.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Lý Tu Diem Review. Rất vui vì hôm nay lại được gặp lại các bạn. Trong tập ngày hôm nay đã có một tình tiết mới, đó chính là mẹ của CEO Toan đã âm thầm cho người đến phá hoại căn nhà mà Toan vừa mới xây dựng lại cho Diễm. Điều đó bản thân tác giả đã tìm đọc ác. Không biết liệu rằng mẹ của Toan có thấy những việc làm của mình sai trái và cả nước lương tâm khi đã đối xử với Lý Tu Diem như vậy không? Không biết là Diễm và Toan có biết là mẹ của Toan là người sau tất cả những sự xung đột không? Tất cả sẽ được hé lộ ở trong phần tập tiếp theo. Mọi người hãy ấn vào nút đăng ký kênh để có thể nhận được thông báo về tập mới nhất sẽ được phát